The Chinese social credit system, what it means for Chinese people and what it means for Canadians. On June 2014, China's State Council issued the planning outline for the construction of a social credit system. It is a proposed social credit system that will be involuntary for all Chinese citizens and ranks them based on numerous aspects of their lives, including financial, such as spending habits and income, social media presence, behavior, characteristics, whether a person has gotten a speeding ticket, and other numerous factors. According to the English translated document of the planning outline for the social credit system, a social credit system is an important component part of the socialist market economy system and the social governance system. It is founded on laws, regulations, standards, and charters. It is based on a complete network covering the credit records of members of society and credit infrastructure. It is opposed by the lawful application of credit information in a credit services system. The objectives of the construction of a social credit system are, by 2020, basically having established fundamental laws, regulations, and standard systems for social credit, basically having completed a credit investigation system covering the entire society with credit information and resource sharing at the basis, basically having completed credit supervision and management systems, having a relatively perfect credit service market system, and giving complete rein to mechanisms to encourage keeping trust and punish breaking trust. Having made clear headway in the construction of sincerity in government affairs, commercial sincerity, social sincerity, and judicial credibility, and a substantial rise in market and social satisfaction levels. Having broadly strengthened the sense of sincerity in the entire society, achieved a clear improvement in the credit environment for economic and social development, and a marked improvement of the economic and social order. In potentially 2 years, the plan is to have a profile built of every single Chinese citizen that will give them a rating. This is very ambitious and requires dealing with a lot of data. Beyond developing an algorithm at such a large scale, there is also a risk to the program for vulnerability and glitches and bugs. Initially reading the first parts of the Chinese outline may seem alarming. Is this Big Brother coming to life? The idea of the Chinese socialist government keeping an eye on every citizen may seem like an oppressive movement, but in the developed world, there are credit systems that rate each person already. In China, because credit is so new to them, not a lot of citizens have loans or mortgages, so it's hard to build credit for them, and for the credit companies to have initial trust to the consumer. In fact, the Chinese social credit system could be considered more fair because a person is judged on more things other than their financial history. Chinese citizens aren't solely based on financial aspects, but also on other things like their social media and if they are perceived as a good person in other aspects of life. For example, if they go to visit their elderly parents more often, they would be rated higher, and this gives them a bigger advantage if they're young and they want to apply for a loan. But the algorithm is also prone to bias because it's developed by the Chinese government. So whatever the Chinese government thinks is good will be biased towards that, meaning individuals may not have the same morals as the Chinese government does. So for example, like I mentioned before, the Chinese government will rate a citizen based on if they visit their elderly parents. But here in the Western society, visiting your elderly parents is important, but it's not very important as it would be there, which I think a lot of it has to do with people in general saying they don't want to be a burden on their children's lives and don't expect them to take care of them as much when they're older. And we have care homes and all that stuff, so maybe the individual values of the person won't exactly match up with the values of the Chinese government, especially because they are a socialist system and they have their lifetime president. There's a lot of issues with the politics of it as well. So how is it being implemented? This is once again a very large and ambitious plan, and having a 6-year deadline for developing such a system as big as this is very demanding. Currently, there are 8 Chinese companies which are working to develop their own social credit score under state projects, meaning these are approved by the Chinese government and they are working on it to be done by 2020. One of the projects being carried out is Sesame Credit, a financial wing of Alibaba. Alibaba is a multinational Chinese company that deals in many things such as retail, technology, and e-commerce. In 2017, the company made the Fortune magazine's list of world's most admired companies, sitting at number 4. It's one of the largest internet companies with sales that are even bigger than US Walmart and Amazon. This means that Sesame Credit has access to any information that Alibaba Group has, which includes financial purchases and any other personal information that comes along with purchasing online. According to Business Insider, 15% of users on Chinese dating site Bahi choose to display their Sesame credit score, and that some weed out potential dates based on the measure of trustability. This definitely motivates people to become better purchasers on Alibaba, and certainly the algorithm developed by Sesame Credit would be biased as someone who makes large purchases on Alibaba. Another company, Tencent, is developing a social credit system as well. The system gives a numeric rating based on the spending habits and social connections. The credit system they've developed rates the person based on 5 things: social connections, consumption, behavior, security, wealth, and compliance. The company isn't clear how they calculate scores in all of these categories, but they do own the WeChat and QQ applications, which both have over 850 million users. They certainly have access to the people in their social groups. Because Tencent has such a large consumer group, they know what the users are reading, playing, chatting about privately, and who they are friends with. The Chinese social credit system plans to rate people based on their social group, which means people will be responsible for what their friends are doing as a consequence of having them in their friend group. So I guess it's time to delete the radical uncle off Facebook. Besides social media, there are other things the government can use to monitor people and rate them. Shanghai is currently testing their own social credit system, and some of the things recorded on the social credit files are jaywalking, traffic violations, refusing to visit elderly parents, not sorting out garbage into the appropriate bins, or dodging train fares. There is a lot of sociological issues that cross over in trying to develop an algorithm to determine if someone is good. It would also be difficult to develop an algorithm to determine if someone is good based on their financial transactions. However, according to Business Insider, inside the Chinese social credit system, if you're constantly buying video games, for instance, you'll be seen as idle. If you're buying diapers, you could be considered a responsible parent. Yet here in North America, playing video games all day is a potential career, and it is a shame to say some parents are not as responsible as some people without children. Today, critics of the Chinese Communist Party can be sentenced 2 years for an inciting subversion of state power charge. This would certainly give someone a very poor social rating in the social credit system, as the government tends to use shaming tactics with people who are not an ideal citizen to the government. Present day, the Chinese Supreme Court has a list of discredited people who are forced to have ringtones that announce that they are listed as discredited people. The shaming tactics used by the government relates to the social credit system. For the government, the system is another way to shame the people who aren't ideal to the Chinese government. If you're a lower scorer, you won't be considered for public office. You'll lose access to Social Security and welfare. You'll be frisked more thoroughly when passing through Chinese customs. You'll be shut out of senior level positions in the food and drug sector. You won't get a bed in overnight trains. You'll be shut out higher starred hotels and restaurants and will be rejected by travel agents. Your children won't be allowed into more expensive private schools as well. The government can also block a person's ID card number, which is required for many things in China, like boarding a flight and registering a social media account. This system makes people more aware of their choices and shapes them into the ideal person the society wants them to be. If this sounds familiar, the social credit system has been compared to the science fiction show Black Mirror's episode Nosedive. The episode tells the story of a society that uses a smartphone technology that rates people based on social interactions. People are able to access the person's social ratings and can rate them when they have an interaction, whether buying coffee at their till or riding an elevator with them. But is the social rating system just a scary story or an actual reality for Canadians? On February 1st of 2018, Facebook patented a technology that classifies people based on the user's features. It proposes to predict the socioeconomic group of the user based on demographic information, device ownership, internet usage, household data, and socioeconomic status. This eventually aims to specialize ads for certain people, which comes with ethical issues of its own. If a person does not own many gadgets, they may be considered poor, but some people who are well off do like to live modestly. This kind of technology being developed is not too far off from the Chinese social credit system, though this kind of technology isn't aiming to publicize scores to other people so that they can be considered for things like mortgages or be rated. The idea of each individual who has a Facebook account and being analyzed and grouped into categories is the same kind of technology that the social credit system would implement. In Canada, the Bill C-51 had a Security of Canada Information Sharing Act added. This enables certain agencies to share data on Canadian citizens. This would certainly make a social credit system in Canada a somewhat realistic possibility, but the need for such a system is not very necessary because there is already a financial credit system in place. Most people in Canada can apply for loans and credit cards without issue, and if they do have bad credit, there are a lot of agencies available for them to build their credit back up. There may not be a high demand for a social credit system in Canada, but that does not mean that the Canadian citizens will not be seeing a similar system in the future. Facebook has patented the technology to group people based on their social media into socioeconomic groups, and there is the government laws that allow federal agencies to Canadian citizens' information. The Chinese social credit system is developed out of the need for a credit system in China. However, this credit system goes beyond the traditional financial credit system that is placed in North America. It also will attempt to analyze people's social lives and rate them based on other factors besides spending habits. While it will remain a dark episode in Black Mirror for North Americans, it will become a reality for the Chinese people by 2020. It's time for the Chinese people to unfriend their radical prone friends from their Facebook and think twice before sending that text message in WeChat.